So here's my point this morning, just so you get the whole idea in a nutshell. My point this morning is deconstruction and reconstruction. I want to tear down your false identity, and at some point, I'm hoping that you'll feel really, really low and small and broken, only so that we can build you back up and help you realize God's truth about you, okay? So we'll ask you first this. Think of a time where you felt small or insignificant. A time where you ever felt small in stature or insignificant in importance. You got those moments. Those are not good, right? We don't like feeling like that. We like feeling important. All of us have gone through times like this, some of us more than others. I think the times where I've really felt really small and insignificant were moments where I saw like a sky full of stars. And we don't really get that too much around here, but I specifically remember being on one of our youth trips and being, I think we were in Northern California, it was at Rock and Water. I think, Nicole, I think you were probably on that trip. I don't remember. But I remember we set up our tents and all this stuff, and you go to sleep, and we got up in the middle of the night to do what you do in the middle of the night. You go to the bathroom in the woods. And I remember coming out of the tent and just feeling it felt like this enormous weight. The sky was so gigantic, and it was so full of stars, dwarfed and small. Now, we might look into the sky and see all the stars and not really comprehend what that means. Like, how big is all of that? Think about this. Wherever you live, and some of us live different directions, think about how long it would take to walk home. For me, it wouldn't really be that bad. I live next door. But for all the rest of you, it would be something significant to walk home. And yet, if we zoomed out and we looked at a map, it would really, all of us encompassed together would be a little dot on the map, right? And we could zoom out a little bit further, and you go from here across the state. Okay, well, it seems really far, but on a map, it's really kind of small compared to the rest of the globe, and we can keep going back out. If the Earth is the size of a BB, the sun is a bowling ball. Okay, so you get those pictures in your mind. Sun is a bowling ball. The Earth is a BB. If the Earth is a BB, then our solar system is 10 football fields. So you think about how big it takes, how long it would take for you to walk home, and we're on that tiny little BB compared to our solar system, which is 10 football fields. Well, our solar system is just part of our galaxy called the Milky Way, and it's in the Orion arm of our spiral galaxy. That's just part of the Milky Way. Our galaxy itself is 100,000 to 130,000 light years across. And you go, man, that sounds like some Star Trek stuff. I don't understand that. How far is a light year? It's the length that light can travel in a year. And you go, well, how fast is light? Light, get this, light travels at 186,000 miles a second. If you snap your fingers, go ahead, snap your fingers with me. Every time you snap your fingers, light can loop the globe 7 times. Okay, that's how far it goes in a second. So in a year, light can travel about 6 trillion miles, and our galaxy and others like it can literally be hundreds of thousands of light years across. And that's just our own. There's galaxies beyond ours. The closest one that is similar to us, a spiral galaxy, is Andromeda. That galaxy, much like our own Milky Way, it is 2.2 million light years away from us. Now, I'm hoping right now that your head is spinning. You're going, that's a lot of math for a Sunday morning, you know. But when I look into space, I'm amazed because we've never found the end of space. As much as we've continued to discover, there's more and more and more, and it just keeps going. I'm going to show you just to kind of help you grasp all those things I threw out to you. This is a video that was passed around the internet a while ago. Some of you may have seen this, but it kind of gives you some perspective. It's incomprehensible when you think of the size of the universe and to think that God is bigger and better than anything that he's created. Like we can't even grasp this. Do you feel insignificant yet? Do you feel small? And my point is not really to make you feel small, but to help you embrace the reality that you are small. You are small. Really, really, really small. But luckily for us, that's not where the story ends. It doesn't end with you being small. All right, now go home because you're small and you're insignificant. Even though we are transient dust particles in a universe that is expanding faster than the speed of light, the unexplainable mystery of mysteries is that you and I are loved and prized by our Creator. Like, this should actually build up even more confidence, because you go, oh my gosh, I am totally so small, and in the scope of the universe, I am insignificant, and yet God chooses to know you and love you and have purpose for you. We are loved and prized over anything in creation. Now that should actually be the hardest thing for us to grasp or to understand. Isaiah 40, verses 25 through 28, it says, "To whom will you compare me? Who is my equal?" asks the Holy One. "Look up into the heavens. Who created all the stars? He brings them out one after another, calling each by its name. And he counts them to see that none are lost or have strayed away. O Israel, how can you say the Lord does not see your troubles? How can you say that God refuses to hear your case? Have you never heard or understood? Don't you know that the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of all the earth? He never grows faint or weary. No one can measure the depths of his understanding." Now, we understand that we're small, but we don't always operate like that. Like, sometimes we get this and we go, oh, I am so small and insignificant. And other times, we think we're pretty big stuff. And there's some people who think they're more big stuff than other people. All these are going to be quotes from some of my favorite athletes or artists. And I don't know, since I was a kid, I always enjoyed some of the cocky, arrogant kind of people. I don't know why. It's just something I enjoyed. That's why I like Puig. Anyway, here we go. This is Muhammad Ali, arguably the greatest boxer of all time. He says, "It's hard to be humble when you're as great as I am." This is one of the greatest, or allegedly one of the greatest hip-hop artists of all time, Kanye West. He says, "My greatest pain in life is that I will never be able to see myself perform live." And it's pretty full of himself, right? And then as we're talking about the World Series, one of the best World Series performers ever, and hated by so many Dodger fans, Reggie Jackson, he says, "The only reason I don't like playing in the World Series is I can't watch myself play." He was amazing in the World Series, but this is what he thought of himself. This is what these people thought of themselves. In fact, before Reggie was a Yankee, he was on the A's, much smaller market, and he was one of the best players in baseball, and he said at the time, "I am the best in baseball. I'm the best who ever played." That's what he said about himself. He said, "If I was in New York, they would name a candy bar after me." Then he went to New York, and they did name a candy bar after him. And here's what people said about it. When you unwrap it, when you unwrap a Reggie bar, it tells you how good it is. So there you go. That's how Reggie felt about himself. That's how other people felt about him. I think when some people think that they're so amazing, like the world has to have them. They have offered something that no one else offers, and they're indispensable. But as rich or as powerful or as popular a person is, in essence, it means nothing. See, I used to think I was big stuff. As a teenager, I thought I could get away with things. I thought I was smarter than my parents, which is so foolish, right? And now, and you see it in your own kids, and they do things, and you go, "What do you think I don't know? I know everything." That's what I tell them. I don't, but I'm going to threaten them with that as long as I can. So we grew up. I'll give you the short version of the story. I think it's the short version. We didn't have sugary cereal growing up. We didn't eat a lot of sugar growing up. My mom got on a health kick, and it was giant 50-pound bags of granola that we ate every single day, organic. It was nasty, and there was no sugar in anything. So I got a job at Carl's Jr., and I had my first money. And I used to ride my bike to work, and I'd ride my bike home, so I had freedom. Freedom and money was kind of a bad combination for me. So I'd stop at the grocery store, and I would buy sugary cereal. A little Count Chocula, a little Golden Grams, Honey Smacks, like whatever it was. Like other kids are buying cigarettes and alcohol, and my big sin of choice was sugary cereal. And so I'd take that and I would hide it in my closet. Because that's where the contraband goes, right? Up in the closet. My mom would leave, And then it was like, all right, and I'd go pull it out. And so I remember one specific time I pulled out the Count Chocula, and I'm coming out into the living room, and I showed my brothers and my sister that I had the Count Chocula. And if I remember correctly, I think they put me on their shoulders, and they hoisted me around. There was like a parade. They were so excited. That's how I remember it. And so we poured the bowls of cereal, and we poured the milk, and we're just getting ready to taste that sweet nectar of, contraband, the stuff, it tastes so good because it's so bad, right? And we're getting ready to eat it, and my mom opens the door and she says, I forgot my, and we're like, doing one of these, and she literally said this, she said, when the cat's away, the mice will play, which I was like, oh, that's so lame. But I got it, she's the cat, she's gone, the mice are just doing whatever they want, getting away with stuff, in case you didn't get that. And so we're eating that. My brother, he was a little bit smarter. He was around the corner where she couldn't really see him. He's like, well, since we're going to get in trouble anyway, he ate as much as he could. It's like, okay, now take me to prison. I'm good now. I thought I could get away with stuff. And that's only one of, so many times, I just thought, I remember actually being arrogant, thinking, you think you can catch me? I'm Matt. Like, you can't catch me. And my mom said, you don't understand, son. I pray for you to get caught because that's how you'll get better. That's a little sidetrack. I thought I was big stuff. In the movie Braveheart, Robert the Bruce, who's trying to become the lord over all of Scotland. He wants to inherit the kingship. And he, at one point, finally realizes the futility of his life. And he says, lands, titles, men, power, nothing. Nothing. Because all of that means nothing. For him, it meant nothing if he didn't have the admiration of the people. And for us, all of those accomplishments, all the things that we think are so important, it means nothing if we don't have a relationship with God. If we're going to try and impress God with all that we've done, with all that we've accomplished, and we stand before him and he goes, what did you do concerning my son? And we go, look at this empire that I built. And he says, it's nothing. See, when we're born, it would serve us well if our parents said, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the story of God. Because this is his story. It's not yours, and it's not mine. See, God has always been the star. It's his story. It started long before we ever arrived, and it will continue long after any of us are gone. And we will always be a bit player in a supporting role, and that in itself is an awesome thing. Moses learned that lesson. In Exodus 3, it says that God wanted Moses to go speak to the Pharaoh to release the Israelites from slavery. And God says to Moses says to God, who am I that I should go to the Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be a sign to you, that it is I who have sent you. When you brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. He says, here's your proof. When you come back to this place and you worship me, you're going to remember that it was me who sent you. Because this is the stuff that's going to happen. This is what's going to come true. And Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask, well, what's his name? What shall I tell them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. That is what you were to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Now, this is how we translate it today. But I want to give you, here's just like some free information here, all right? You ready? This is some college information for you, so you can write this down if you want. The word that they're using is the Hebrew word ehyeh, E-H-Y-E-H. I will be has sent you. But Moses couldn't really say ehyeh, because then he's saying, I will be has sent me, and only God can say, I will be. So in the next sentence after this, God says, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, has sent me. And that is what Moses says. Yahweh is he will be. Ehyeh is I will be. Yahweh is he will be. And that word Yahweh is used over 6,500 times in the Old Testament. All right? Yahweh, the Lord. We have now translated it in order to honor God's sacred name. The Israelites stopped using, the Hebrews stopped using the word Yahweh because they wanted to keep his name holy. And so they replaced it with the Hebrew word for Lord, which is Adonai. And maybe you've heard Adonai. So that's the Hebrew word Lord. If sometimes in your Bibles you'll see the capital L-O-R-D with all caps, that is the word that was used for Yahweh. That is Lord speaking of him. There's other ones, Adonai, that are just El, with just a regular L and the regular letters, and that's just talking about a Lord like a master. So Yahweh becomes Lord. Again, they didn't even want people to read it. They thought it was so holy, so they took out the vowels, and all you're left with is YHWH, all right? And they take the vowels from Adonai, and they insert those in, and so Yahweh becomes Yahovah. They put in the vowels from Adonai, and it becomes Yahovah. They never pronounced it Yahovah. They always thought of Yahweh, but it was like a visual reminder that you don't actually say these words. It's so holy. Well, we didn't get that, and it was translated into English. We translated into Jehovah. And so whenever you see Jehovah, understand that Jehovah is the same as Adonai, which is Yahweh, which is the name of God. And this is what he's saying right here. He will be, I am. I have always existed. I will be. I am the same always and forever. Moses, I don't know. If he was me, he'd be confused. The Bible doesn't say he was confused, so I'm guessing he got it. But when I used to read that, I used to get, what does that mean? I am has sent me. Like, I think of Popeye, like, I am what I am. I don't understand what this means. But I think maybe it took some time for this to sink in for Moses. And then he understood that God's name means that he is unchanging, that he is constant, that he's unending, that he's always present, that he's always God. See, God is telling Moses by telling him, I am who I am. I will be. What he's telling him is, I am the center of everything. I am running the show. I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. I am the owner of everything. I am the Lord. I am the creator and the sustainer of life. I am the Savior. I am more than enough. I am inexhaustible, immeasurable. I am God. And so Moses understood God's name, and something more, if he understood God's name, then he understands his own name. Because his own name is not really Moses. If God's name is I am, that means Moses' name is I am not. I am not the center of everything. I am not in control. I am not the solution. I am not all-powerful. I am not calling the shots. I am not the owner of anything. I am not the Lord. And that flies completely in the face of what we're taught all the time about as long as you're happy, as long as you're successful, and it becomes that this world revolves around us. And Moses is learning here, it's not about me. It's always been about God, and it always will be about God. And so, if he understands that God's name is I am, and he understands that his name is I am not, then what does that mean for us? It means that my name is not really Matt, but I am not also. I am not running anything. I'm not the head of anything. I'm not in charge of anything. I'm not the maker. I am not the savior. I'm not holding it all together. I am not all-knowing. I'm not God. And so if I'm not God, then when God tells me something, I've got to trust him. I've got to believe him. If my plans are different than God's, then I've got to side with his plans because I understand this reality that God is I am and I am not. And so I sink way into the background and God becomes further and further into the front. He becomes the forefront. And so everybody calls me Matt, but when we get down to it, my name is I am not. This is my identity. This is who I am. And we might have thought that we were important before, that, well, of course, God has recruited me. I have so many skills or so many talents, and maybe you think that God, he like a college scout, he's got angels out there going, oh, did you see this one over here? Look at this church over here. Oh, this one's good. He's got potential. Like that God has got some deficiency somewhere and he's going, I need to fill a hole over here. I need this guy to be my setup man, for the closer over here. Like that we have something really valuable to offer. You think God has ever said, how can I run the universe without Nick Clark. I don't know. How am I going to do this? How will I run the universe without Beverly McMullen? How can I go another day without... What goes through his mind? Because it doesn't. And if you're here and you're going, yeah, I did always think that. Sorry, it doesn't go like that. He doesn't need us. Here's what Louis Giglio says. After an eternity of being God, he shows no signs of wear and tear. He has no needs. His accounts are all in the black. He is the owner, not to mention creator, of all the world's wealth and treasure. He made the gold and silver and the trees that we print our paper money on. God does whatever he wants. His purposes are a sure thing. There's no stopping him. No cutting him off at the pass. No containing him. No refuting him. No short-circuiting his agenda. God is in control. He sends forth lightning from his storehouses. He breathes out the wind, waters the earth, raises up rulers, directs the courses of nation, births life, ordains death. In the midst of it all, he still has time to be intimately acquainted with everyday affairs of everyone on the planet. God knows everything about everything and everyone. His eyes race back and forth across the cosmos faster than we can scan the words on this page. There's not a bird flying through the air or perched on a branch that escapes his field of vision. He could start with Adam and name every man, woman, and child who has ever lived, describing every detail about each one. To him, pitch darkness and midday are one and the same. Nothing is hidden from him. He wrestles with no mysteries. He doesn't need to wait for a polygraph machine to decipher the truth. He sees clearly and comprehends all that he sees. God's rule and reign are unrivaled in history and eternity. He sits on an everlasting throne. His kingdom has no end. Little gods abound, but he alone made the heavens and the earth. God has never feared a power struggle or hostile takeover. He doesn't have to watch his back. He has no equal, no peer, no competition. And it makes perfect sense that his name should be I am. And even more sense that my name should be I am not. We see a lot of this in Job chapter 40. When Job, in all that he's faced, he starts questioning God, why? Like, why did you do this to me? And God says, before you ask why, and he starts explaining all of this stuff. Can you comprehend all this? Do you understand all that I understand? And sometimes as parents, we've had to bust those kind of things out on our kids. Because they see this one thing and you're going, wait, do you know what it takes to run a household? Do you know what it takes to pay bills and to do all these things? And that is so minuscule in comparison to how God operates with us. But God sees the whole picture. He doesn't need us. And again, that goes so contrary to what we grow up believing, that we're so special and so important. And so my purpose, again, was to undo that, to break that down, to deconstruct that, and so you can learn the truth that you have value, but it's not because of yourself, but it's because of the God that created you, the God that imprinted his image on you, that gives you value, that gives you worth, that gives you significance. And in that respect, we have more significance and value and worth than anything else in all of creation. I don't have it up here, but just listen to Psalm 139. Listen to what David says about God and how much he loves you and what he does for you. David says this, God, investigate my life. Get all the facts firsthand. I'm an open book to you. Even from a distance, you know what I'm thinking. You know when I leave and when I get back. I'm never out of your sight. You know everything I'm going to say before I start the first sentence. I look behind me and you're there, and I look up ahead and you're there too. Your reassuring presence, coming and going. It's too much. It's too wonderful. I can't take it in. Is there any place I can go to avoid your spirit or to be out of your sight? If I climb to the sky, the top of a mountain, you're there. If I go underground, you're there. If I flew on the morning's wings to the far western horizon, you'd find me in a minute. You were already there waiting. And then I said to myself, oh, he even sees me in the dark. At night, I'm immersed in light. It's a fact. darkness is not dark to you. Night and day, darkness and light, they're all the same to you. Oh yes, you shaped me and formed me in my mother's womb, inside and out. And I thank you, high God, you're breathtaking. Body and soul, I am marvelously made. I worship in adoration. What a creation. You know me inside and out. You know every bone in my body. You know exactly how I was made, bit by bit. How I was sculpted from nothing into something. Like an open book, you watched me grow from conception to birth. All the stages of my life were spread out before you. The days of my life all prepared before I'd even lived one day. In the same breath that you can have zero significance in the scope of the universe, this chapter says you have every significance. That God has given that to you in the intricate way that he forms you and cares about you and knows you. So why does he want us? If we're not valuable to him, if we don't actually have anything to offer him, if we don't have skills that he's going, I need this, here's an area where I'm lacking, if he doesn't need that, then what value do we bring to God? What is it that makes us acceptable to him? Is there anything we can do to make us more desirable to God so that he goes, okay, well, that's good. Okay, now I want you, or I need you, or I'm gonna bless you more. Is there anything we can do to deserve his grace, his love, his validation? No. There's nothing we can do. In fact, Brennan Manning says this. He says, God loves who we really are. No amount of spiritual makeup can render us more presentable to him. He says, you can't do anything to improve your value to God. You can't get all dressed up, all gussied up, and you're leading worship, or you're leading a Bible study, or you're helping homeless people, or whatever, and God goes, okay, now I'm going to love you more. I'm going to send you spiritual flowers. Like, no, it says that he already loves us in our most vulnerable state, in our nakedness, in our ugliness. He loves us. Our worth comes from a God who accepts us as we are. No fakery, no makeup, no camera tricks, no Instagram angles, We don't have to do that to make ourselves more attractive to God. Naked, vulnerable, and true. This is how he accepts us. And so if we want to have an impact on our world, we have to get this. We have to understand where our value comes from. Because once we get that, once we understand where our value comes from, then we can learn to be satisfied in him alone. And this is probably the hardest part. Are we really satisfied with God alone? Are we, like Paul, learning to be content in every situation, whether we have a lot or a little, full stomachs or empty? Have we learned, like Paul did, to be satisfied in God alone? Or do we still feel that we need other people's stuff, other people's money? And I don't mean stealing, someone's got to pay you. Other people's money, other people's approval, their Instagram likes, Twitter followers, people reading your subreddits, whatever it is. Is that the things that we need in order to feel validated, in order to feel significant, in order to feel loved? Most of you probably don't know this guy, Phil Vischer. He's been making videos since he was a kid. As a lot of people who grow up to direct movies and stuff, they've been doing it since they were kids. And he thought this is going to be his great work for God. He was going to do this. It's been his dream since he was little. He was going to make videos for God. So he came up with this company called Big Idea, and they made VeggieTales. All right? So now have you heard of Phil Vischer? Or you've heard of VeggieTales at least. VeggieTales starts off small, and they're making these videos, and it spreads by word of mouth, and before you know it, they've sold 50 million videos. And they are just on the rise, and they're climbing, and they start off with 3 workers, and they start moving, they're at 200 plus workers, and they're doing video games, DVDs, books, and he's thinking, this is a lot of work that he is doing for God, and it's reaching global status. And so they hired all these extra people because they were climbing and they're counting on that continued climb. And then out of nowhere, they plateau. And they're worried because they hired all these people with the idea that they were going to continue to grow, and they weren't doing anything different. They didn't know why. Just out of nowhere, they plateaued. But they had this movie that was going to come out. And they thought, the movie's only projected to make this much money, but they thought, what if it doubled? What if it made way more than they were expecting? It would keep them afloat. Everything would go well. And they thought, God can do that. They know God can do that. But he didn't. So then they thought, okay, well, the DVD is going to come out from the movie. And actually, in kids' movies, that's where the majority of sales comes from, is from the DVDs. And again, it was only projected to do so much. And he thought, if it can do more, the company can be saved. And it didn't. And then out of nowhere, they had this lawsuit with a former worker who was complaining about how she was treated. And they thought, well, God could get rid of this lawsuit and everything would be okay. And it wasn't. And he started thinking, why? Like, why would God do this? It was doing so much good work for God's kingdom. He gave him this dream when he was little. He showed up. He blessed it. It was doing well. Why would God take this away, which was, he felt, doing so much good work for this kingdom? Why would God put him through this? And so maybe you're wondering the same thing. Maybe you're thinking about your life and you're going, God, I feel like you've been telling me this my whole life. Here's what I'm supposed to do. Here's what I'm supposed to accomplish. And it's different now, and I don't understand. And so he goes to a conference and he's reminded of the story of Abraham and Isaac. God promised Abraham, you don't have any kids, but you're going to have a kid. You're going to have a son. And from that son, you're going to have a whole lineage of people who will bless the world. Your offspring will bless the world. So here's this dream. And Abraham's like, okay. And he has this son, Isaac. And here's the dream come true. And then God tells Abraham, I want you to sacrifice your son. And we can get into the whole moral ramifications of why God would ask this, and we can debate that another time. But Abraham leads Isaac up the mountain, and I'm sure he's thinking, God, this is what you promised me. Like, how could you ask me to do this? This is the dream fulfilled. How are you going to do this? But in obedience, he's going to go through it until finally God sends an angel to stop the sacrifice. And in the end, we find God is never honored through human sacrifice. And again, that's a whole another thing there. But what we see, what God saw, is that Abraham was willing to put him above everything else. And this is a really hard one. Because anything that we put above God, including our dreams, including our own children, anything we put above God has become our God. It has become our idol. And if we've got something else there, we cannot serve God faithfully if we have another God. And so Abraham finds out that he's willing to let that go. And God says, and now I can use you. Now I can use you because I know that this is the most important thing in your life. And what Phil found out was that if for himself, he was putting this work for God more than his relationship with God. And it was this great thing, and he thought, I'm doing this great thing for God, but his relationship with God was being sacrificed in the process. His good work for God became his idol. And then he heard a quote from C.S. Lewis. It said, he who has God and many things has nothing more than he who has God alone. So what does that mean? How do we translate that? Well, he who has God and a Bugatti. If you haven't seen any Bugattis or McLaren, you can go down to CNC Motors over here. My kids, Jack really wanted to go down there and see the cars. And you guys know, I don't know anything about cars. They're pretty cool to look at, but I don't know anything about them. And he's telling me, he's having to educate me. But we walked through, and Matt and Nate were, they were working there, and they were showing us around all the cool cars. They are pretty cool looking. But according to this, he who has God and has a new Bugatti has nothing more than he who has God alone. Because you have everything when you have God. He who has God and a 4,000 square foot vacation home in Malibu, that would be really big in Malibu, has nothing more than the person who has God alone. See, because if God is infinite, we cannot add to him. Nothing plus God equals nothing more than God alone. He who has God in a wonderful marriage has nothing more than he who has God alone. He who has God, an amazing ministry that's doing work all over the globe, has nothing more than he who has God alone. Are we really satisfied with God alone? Now, this is something I tell my kids all the time. It's one of those things, it's like, in a way, I'm telling myself now, in case something happens, this is the thoughts that I've been training myself to think. If I lost everything, but I still have God, I have everything I need. And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, because we do get attached to the things of this life. And they're good things. And it's hard to lose them. But we have to understand that the truth that's found in this, that if we have God, we have everything that we need. And so what Phil discovered was once we find out what is most important, God may give us our dream back. He may, like Abraham, go, all right, you showed me what was most important, and now you can proceed with this dream. You can move forward. He may give it back. Or he may not. You may live the rest of your life without it. But you'll be okay because you know that your satisfaction is found in God alone. Now, at the time when I saw Phil Vischer speak, at that time, Big Idea had not been resurrected as a company, and they were still kind of sitting and waiting. And so as he told us this, he was living this reality that God may never give this back to me, and I'm okay with that. But if he does, I'm not going to put this over God. Since then, Big Idea has been resurrected as a company, and they have continued to do well and make more videos. And so we've got it backwards. We want to make an impact on the world, and so many of us are like, I want to do that one big thing. I want to write that one song, or write that one book, or make that one movie, or have that one big giant impact, and the world is changed through it. Like, I want to be like Noah. Where's my ark, Lord? I want my ark that I can save the world. Well, we got to know a little bit more about Noah. Do you know how old Noah was when God gave him this world-changing task? 500 years old. That's a whole other discussion on why people were so old back then. He was 500. So what was going on in Noah's life leading up to those 500 years, leading up to that point? Genesis 6:9. Let's see, do I have it up there? I don't. I guess we'll just leave it there. Genesis 6:9, it says that Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his contemporaries. Noah walked with God. For 500 years, he walked with God. He lived for God. He did all those mundane things that we go, oh, but you just want me just to live every day for you? Yeah, that's how you change the world. And then when you are ready, when you've been training all this time, I can use you for something big. And we're sitting back going, okay, God, just show me when the big thing shows up. And then I'll show up and I'll do my good thing, and then I'll go back to sit. Trust you with a lot. If we would focus our passion on walking every day with God, the world would change. See, the world doesn't learn about God by watching Christian videos. They learn about it by watching Christians. They learn about it by watching you. How are you interacting in your life? How are you showing them God changing you? How are you showing them that you live this out, that I am not, that I've put God first in my life? Phil learned that his ministry did not validate his existence. God alone validates his existence. And the same is true for you, and it's true for me. So what? What does all this mean? God is big, we're not. He's calling the shots. He's directing the script. He's determining the plot. And we're not. And what's really wild is that while God doesn't need any of us, he's choosing to include us. He's inviting us to be a part of his story. You know, we're like the little kid that's going, can I help paint? Is it because I'm going, oh yeah, I need some help. Let me get a 3-year-old to help me paint. Like, no. They get to be part of this, and they get to feel important. They get to be part of this story. That's us, you guys. We get to be part of God's story, and that is the greatest story ever told.